Welcome to Coaching of the New Age. Today we have a new podcast. My guest is from the USA. It's Kyle Dammann. He's an entrepreneur, business automation consultant, and leadership coach. I recently got to work with Kyle on my new coaching program, Befreie deine Energie with Patrick, which means free your energy with me. On this journey, we quickly identified we have a passion for the German culture, and we discussed a lot of topics about the history of USA and Germany, which we got really deep on it, and we got the idea that we want to do a podcast and share our perception, our ideas, our topics, which we both reflect on, and want to share this with you guys, and to also reflect how we can work together, since Germany and USA has in more ways, on a spiritual way, political way, we have a relationship, and we thought it's important that we talk about it and we find solutions and we communicate and we try to activate leaders of the new paradigm, which are more conscious or want to become conscious and want to lead other people and other humans into a better world, make Germany and make USA great again. So have fun in the podcast, comment below, and I see you on the end. Bye bye. So let's talk about like the connection to the German soul. I would say for the viewers today, I wanna go the steps with you, and in the podcast with Kyle now, we want to see our different views, my view, which I lived there, and also like Kyle's view, how we got together and why this topic brought us also in on one thing together. And for me, the German soul was something what I discovered more deeply when I traveled. I felt more the connection to the German soul, why I have some experience which I experienced in Germany, which was normal to me, which I thought this is normal, this will be in the world everywhere. Everyone would experience the same things as I in Germany. And when I traveled in Australia, for example, I got a little confused that things not went in the way like Germany, which I first want to know your thoughts about our organization, like how we organize things, like, because what I learned in Germany, we organize everything so strictly with time, with also like tidying up things. It has to be in order. What your thoughts on it, and what is your interest in it?
Mhm. Thank you, Patrick. For anybody who doesn't know, Patrick and I connected both of the passion of wanting to, I think, consider just as man is, what are we doing to help make sure that the cultural values that we know and have are maintained in a healthy way, not in an oppressive way. And just now we have lived some life. We've seen some good and bad. We've seen what good intentions, even in government or even in society, how good intentions don't always lead to structured and fair outcomes. And what separates ideology versus good even governmental practice, leadership practice, how we build businesses, how we interact with our communities and our global communities abroad too, where often there's, these times of conflict. And Patrick and I went deep on this conversation a few months ago, and it opened up for me understandings about my upbringing growing up in a family with strong German heritage and roots. And even though nobody in my family has been back to Germany for 3 generations, when I connected with Patrick, when we talked about the state of our respective countries and cultures, especially with men, because men have been basically backed into a corner these days of things they should and shouldn't do that are acceptable in society. And I think we've all felt that squish, and we all want to do 99% of the people, to me, Patrick, at least in America, most people want to make enough money to not have to worry about money. They want to do what they want to do. They want to raise good kids. And for most people, including myself, that's you get to live your life. You have a good life. You build a business, have a career, some family. It's fascinating how I think across the world, we would say most people want to live that way. Well, what factors of our nations is worth keeping? What is worth learning from? Patrick, I'm not standing here with any strong answers, but this is the exchange and dynamic that you and I have. I believe in our country. I believe in Germany. I believe that the United States and Germany through mainly, I think, economic ties. And I'm not saying economics is perfect, but I think economics is one of the best models we have. I think that model can continue to evolve into more informed, equitable, and fair dynamics for society and decreasing malnutrition and other forms of poverty that still exist today. Patrick, my philosophy in my career, and even as I build my company these days and grow our team and work with the brands that we do, we recognize when we teach our leaders how to lead other people, because when you grow a company, you have to train your layer of leadership. When we teach them understanding what trauma is, Patrick, what really is malnutrition, especially in America, you see the obesity in America. People don't have a foundational understanding of what nutrition is. And the day I learned, Patrick, the day I learned that obesity is actually absence of nutrition, because when you have whole foods that give you the fibers and the fats and the proteins, you don't want to overeat. The overeating is because of not having the nutrients in the foods that are present and available. And this is where the free market system, to me, comes up short, is both in healthcare and nutrition and then in food, because these things require a different level of ethics and standards. And well, if anybody has any good ideas, this is why we're creating this podcast. We want to create ideas and bring people together. So
What I feel or what I think also is why we create this podcast is because also the conflicts we had, and I think it's also connected to our history, what we learned or how we grow up, and how we got conditioned from our childhood, from our parents, or from our ancestors. And I always think like it had a reason why we came together, because from our history point, we see there is a connection between the USA and Germany. And I wouldn't go deep on that, because I would focus more on the spiritual thing, what like the country for Germany and USA, what we could like do together, because you somehow represent USA because you live there, and I connected to the German soul. And it's not like that I don't care about like what's happening in Germany, how society goes now. It's not like one thing as like I don't give a shit like
yeah.
what will be the future. That's why I choose the career. That's why I'm passionate about making somehow not the German soul better, because I see it from a higher point that the German soul, with all their knowledge, with all the things who are already there, our ancestors already lived it. in a, there was not everything good, but there
Mhm.
was things who had value. So there were more values maybe in their ancestors, maybe even in my grandparents, somehow they had more values when I
Yeah.
compared it to now, where society goes now. And with the podcast, it's also what I want to bring to the surface, that the young people, they they they're so disconnected from this knowledge, let's say, what leadership is, what is like to organize, who they should trust. So they just follow the narrative now, which we see now what they lead us to. So they don't have someone really to, like, to have a leader, because we so traumatized in Germany when
Mm.
from our history, like when
Mhm.
someone is there who says we want to make something better for Germany, like they call him a Nazi, or they call him all these words which we experienced the last years. So there's a lot of fault, of, yeah, distraction also, of
Okay.
mm, which would be easy to resolve, but this is the situation we have now. And sometimes even now, I don't have to, I don't have the words to put all together, but I just want to share a glimpse, which I reflect now what's going on. And I think with this podcast, we also want to share ideas, visions,
Mhm.
which um, we see also from a point of maybe the reflector thing, because we see it maybe in a different time zone or something.
Mhm.
But what you say, what we experience in our program together is like how important leadership is, and you already talked about now. Like, how do you see, when you see your life, and what one was the first time you took leadership, you took
Mhm.
responsibility for something, you saw value in it?
Mhm. Thank you, Patrick. I was introduced to leadership, specifically entrepreneurship, in my late teens, um, growing up around some families who started businesses. And in America, there's a very supportive culture of entrepreneurship. It's not easy. You have to pay for it yourself. You can go for federal grants and money in these things, but it's hard. It takes a long time. And anybody who's started and runs a business, you know it's a process of years of risk and learning new things and failing and all the things that come with it. I think entrepreneurship, at least in America, because of the court system, favors entrepreneurs generally. Um, I think I feel quite good about the American court system personally in terms of how it treats entrepreneurs. And it does give us a courage, a confidence to know that even if we go out and we fail, the court systems in our country and the culture supports entrepreneurial failure. And, Patrick, leadership is an interesting term. And there's various communities online, spiritual ideas, new age ideas, new paradigm ideas. And these are all interesting topics of conversation. But at some point in your life and some point in our lives, the conversation has to move from Facebook and into our local communities. And this is usually where people short circuit. They stop the process because they have stories, ideas, or even insufficiencies of not knowing how to manage economics and finances or a budget. And sometimes that shows up even unconsciously, Patrick, where we say, "Oh, that system's corrupt. Those people over there, they won't listen to me. They won't like my idea." We live in our mind in assumptions, and we don't have the wherewithal to challenge the assumptions that our mind makes anytime we think about doing something new that might carry some risk. So that first phase of that first step of leadership is, for me, was observing others, knowing that full well that they could fail and it's going to be difficult, but there's also rewards if you do step into it. And let's just talk about money for a second. Somebody says, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of money and money this and money that. Well, Patrick, money can't buy what it used to, societally, culturally. And that's a good thing because, there's people that used to be able to get away with using their money for lots of bad things, and they're in prison now on a big stage. And I think that's a really good thing for culture and living in a society that has some sense of justice through a court system, of course. Um, Anything else about leadership, Patrick? Anything else there?
I think you describe it really good to what's maybe going on. And it's also interesting what you said about leadership and like starting a business. You you experience something completely different than to me, because in my family or in my community, what I see, what I experience, I didn't experience that someone steps out and starting a business. It's not, I mean, there's more people starting businesses now, but when I grow up as a child or in school, I never experienced someone like would start a business or like would go in a different direction. Since we already talked about in our program and now we share it, that still in Germany, I also want to talk about mm, the more dark sides, the more the conditioning we experienced
Yes.
for Germans. What I talk now, what I experience, it's normal for especially men. What I also see my friends doing, old friends, new friends, that they go in the same job as their dad, as their
Mhm.
grandpa, so they follow the patterns, and most of them are really miserable, and
Mm,
but they're still doing it. They're still hold on to it because it's still, let's say, somehow the German proudness that
I see.
the, let's say, it's also somehow of a status, and
Uh-huh.
it brings safety. What I got told as a child when I work for a big company and when I stay there long and when I
Uh-huh.
behave and when I be there. And there's also good points in it.
Yes.
I'd say I learned a lot from it, good and bad, but I wouldn't describe the career as my dad, as my grandpa, and maybe other ancestors, which I don't know, maybe they went the same way. I can feel it, but it was not my path because I experienced something different when I took the step out of Germany and I went to Australia and I experienced some new fields, which there was things my soul wants to express, want to
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
I wanted to more get in contact with different cultures, with
Uh,
different people, and hear their story, hear what they did. And then I experienced that not everyone live like in Germany, because I grow up in a small town with 10,000 people, and
mhm.
I never got really out since just to Greece some holidays, but this is what I experienced. And my dad seemed happy what he did in somehow
Mhm.
on the surface. So he could feed our family. His
Mhm.
paycheck came every month, and I'm
Mhm.
grateful that he did the work, but years ago he said this was not his career. He would do something with sport.
Oh,
He didn't find a way out. And this is also a thing, maybe a German culture thing, that Germans too proud then
uh-huh.
to talk about their mistakes because they want to hold on to their shame and to their maybe their conditioning.
Yes. This resonates in America of um the working class people, the people that, build the things that we rely on in the world. And Patrick, I think there are new ways of working in these precision jobs, and AI is going to change the way we all work. And over the next 5 to 20 years, this is going to be very interesting. Anybody watching this, Patrick and I are, Patrick is a thought leader. He's an innovator. He's an entrepreneur. And so am I. And I recognize in the work I do in the United States is that we, in the business that I've built, we are helping to train the teams inside of companies to keep up with where social media, technology, marketing, automations, sales, customer service, this central nucleus of a company that all of the data and all of the human touch points connect around, there's a need for a not just an upgrade of the software, but an upgrade of how humans think about how we interface with these various automation tools, which will be more AI influenced in the future. These systems are just as important as any mechanical system, as any factory in a machine. And well, this is just where I work and what I see. And the young people know it's changing here in America, Patrick. They know that the colleges aren't giving it to them because that's a fact. I sometimes teach an occasional class at a well-known university, and they don't know the common tools they're not being taught the common tools that I use every day in my professional work as being a digital marketer and a systems and team builder. And well, when you have marketing and data science college students not being taught foundational items that our teams use every day, there's a big problem. And these kids are going to graduate, they're not ready. So this is why we've invested in online education the way we have, in building resources where entrepreneurs can send their team for the education they need. And Patrick, I say all that to say this. I think the global culture is already here digitally. I think it's important we all ask ourselves, what do we want to preserve of our cultures? What is important to the German soul, even to the American soul? Um, I think the American soul is 30% German, by the way. The American soul is strong in America. For any Germans who haven't come to America, if you go to the Northeast in the United States, New York, Pennsylvania, um, Massachusetts, not so much New York City. New York City is not the same because it's a cultural melting pot. But if you go to rural Northeast in America, you will find yourself at home here in that sense. I think of America as a bigger, more disorganized Germany in a lot of ways. Our culture is inspired by German precision engineering, even strength. We see German men as strong, capable people. And at least for me, I think of America as I'm concerned with the nutrition and obesity in our country because our healthcare costs are not expensive because of, well, politicians do steal money from the system, but it's expensive because nobody's taking care of themselves. I don't know. Not nobody, but there's a big portion of the population. You know what it is, Patrick, just incompassion. People grew up in environments where nutrition wasn't a conversation, and the food that was at arm's length through the restaurants and the grocery stores and the fast food is not good. But the body is a system of habit, right? And what you're used to eating, your body craves, even though in some ways it's not good for it. Um, to me, Patrick, in the next 5 to 10 years, I feel called to bring my systems and automation knowledge to several industries as we do, but organic food, keeping soil healthy and clean to grow food, that's the root of our nation. I mean, we can talk about politics, we can talk about AI, we can talk about anything else, but the root of a nation is the health of its soil and the food it can grow. And yes, we import food from here to there, but we all got to live through COVID, right? And see, hey, this global web of, shipping all these things everywhere, that's very fragile.
Mm. Yes. So I think it's also when we come to the health, like for the femininity, I want to talk later, but what I feel is like when you have a vision, we come back now, we go one step closer. Like we get connected now to the soul when we have the connection to the soul, to the knowledge,
Mhm.
then like what is your vision? Like what is really the vision? And this is what I also see that in Germany, that our young generations, there is no vision for most of them.
I
There
see.
is there is no, just I want to make a bunch of money. That's what
Yeah.
what a lot of people, but there's no drive behind it. They want the quick money, the quick sex, quick addiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think this is also a topic from America. Maybe in America with nutrition, it's worse than Germany. What I see, what you tell me now. Um, but yeah, I think also it's a word problem that like the real whole foods, like
Uh-huh.
which was available even here since I'm now in Greece, like the nutrition is also not the nutrition which Greece had before, like 20
Right.
years, which they had the healthiest nutrition in the world, and like
Wow.
they got so old with, for example, olive
Yes.
oil and all that things, but it's also changed a lot. So I think as humanity and as men, we need to remember why we're here, and this is also like the topic how we can get the connection back to our masculinity. And I see it that most guys try it like to be the biggest guy in the gym or something like that. And then they think like, oh, I did everything for my masculinity. And they're just focusing on that. And all the other fields, they're controlled, they're manipulated by little things which bring them some, mm, how can I say, who makes them a quick dopamine hit, let's say.
Mhm.
This is what I see a lot of guys doing. Um, when I
Patrick,
walk in my daily life, I see it. It's not like when you go now in the internet and you connect, you think like, oh, there's a lot of people working on themselves, starting businesses, but then you
I
go
see.
out in the real world and
Yes.
you see completely the opposite. And then you see, oh, we still have a lot of work to do. There's not like
Yeah.
this sometimes when we talk about AI,
Uh-huh.
sometimes even I live in illusion. And when I'm like being in my passion, I do my coaching, and then I go outside and I see society. It's completely the opposite. So you experience that, and you also need to handle it as a man and try to connect to your inner world, because there is the true freedom, which, yeah, this is is another topic now.
Mhm.
What do you think, how do you find as a man the most, or feel the most freedom, since all we talk now also a lot about what's going on in the world, what's going on in Germany, but
Mhm.
how do you can find really your own freedom in connection to living your vision?
Hmm. Beautiful question. Um, I have a problem with that, and that's cause for a lot of murder around this planet when people think like that and they don't have a space for critical questioning, if only for the space, because free speech is the foundation of all civil society. Um, Patrick, spirituality is an interesting word because all these words we use are often polluted with cultural sub context, right? These words end up being polluted, even including the word spirituality. But um, psychedelics were a bridge for me, Patrick, to understand a clean connection to my spirituality. and simply recognizing that there's a dimension that connects us all that we don't always think about consciously. But if we act that way in our lives, such as we are all connected and affected by each other's actions, and that's, in some ways in the core teachings of even the Christian Bible, that is what Jesus taught. But people get wrapped up in the religious cult-like aspects of blood. These in the United States, Patrick, lots of Christianity is like this blood cult that you have to drink of the blood. Like they say these words. And why do they say these words? Nobody's questioning it. And most of the people I see at churches, their grandfathers did it and their fathers did it. And and there's lots of moral, and by moral, I mean a good thing. There's lots of moral standard keeping held in communities, in churches around the world. And I mean that in all races, and every not all races, but in all religions. Different religions have different problems, such as corruption of their, the original teachings and these things. And we have to be diligent. Without a vision, there's a quote that says, "Without a vision, men perish." That might even be an Old Testament Hebrew Bible verse. In fact, I think it is. Without a vision, men perish. I think that's King Solomon. Without a vision, men perish, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but it's so true. Patrick, underneath it all, if there's not a vision, and this is where having others around us that are going for it in smart, compassionate, effective, sensible ways, when we see people taking risks, it builds a collective knowledge, or what I call a brain trust, right? A mind share among leaders such as yourself and myself, that we say, hey, this can happen. We can build organizations. We can make sure that they're sufficiently funded so they can take root and turn into something beneficial. But that vision, what is a worthwhile future collectively and individually, but it has to start individually. And this is where I think people are culturally, Patrick, I'll say this one last thing, and then I would love to hear what you think about this. Culturally, we are conditioned to suppress our vision.
Yes.
And if we're not connected to that part of ourselves, that inspiration and insight that we might call excitement or passion or inspiration, or when we're not connected to that that part of ourselves that, when we wake up in the morning, we're excited to pursue our talents, passions, and gifts, and we have the means and the vocation to do so, there's a sickness that accumulates in somebody, and you see it in their eyes, right? And you see it I think it's also that the old world systems of economy and industry, they were in such a survival mode. Like, look at the last 100 years, right? They were in such a survival mode from all of the fighting and all of the wars and all of the mechanization that happened so fast, that all they could do was get it to the point where at least it worked. Maybe not everybody was happy, but at least they weren't starving or fighting each other. So, we always build on our foundations of our ancestors, and getting to any sort of new age or new paradigm isn't just about learning and applying new things. It's about integrating the lessons from our past. That's why I'm a student of history, which has been my compass through life, because I see lots of well-meaning people adopting what are essentially violent ideologies to suppress free speech, to modify other speech, and they mean well, most of them. That's what's wild about it. So, Patrick, I think was so into the conversation, there is a passion, there's a fire, there's a drive, especially as a man, right? And that masculine desire from deep within to channel our gifts into our work, into our community. Yeah, interesting.
This is, yeah. When I first thought, like, when I went out of Germany, and since I never experienced before in school or in my jobs before what I did, I call it was a program, and I never had the drive. When I see it now from perspective why I did it, it was more like a program because I was trapped. I didn't find a way out. I thought I will never find a way out. And when I had the time for myself, when I traveled in Australia, and there was a time I stayed on a farm for a longer time, for like a month, and I didn't have internet connection and all that. This was the first time I could thought what I was doing. Why,
Uh,
why I even doing this? And then I thought I was such a victim of my circumstances,
uh,
which there was no drive, there was no passion, there was no value for something. And I think this was the first, like saying, I wouldn't call it awakening. I would say the first time I saw patterns, I saw the program, what I'm doing, and is this the way I still want to doing it again?
mhm.
And then for me, the clear answer was then no. Like, this is also an interesting thing that what I experienced German people, for them it's difficult to say no.
Ah,
Example, like our immigration now from this point, like they
I
can't
see.
say no. This is like not good for our country, but
Uh-huh.
most people can't say no. They know it's wrong. They know that it's wrong. It's not gonna make the country better, but they're so in shame and fault from our history, so
Uh-huh.
and say no. But what I experience is that I went a step out of it and I said no. I said this is not gonna be my career anymore. This is not
Mhm.
gonna be where I am in 10 years.
Mhm.
So from then I had the vision. I saw that I will work with people, and with all the way I went to now, there was times which I didn't get the clients, I didn't get the money, I didn't get um, the lifestyle I want. But for me, the my values and the fire in me, like say, this is your way, this is your plan, and you're not gonna go another way.
Mm.
Experienced already the old paradigm of your
Mhm.
Patrick Zero. You experience that,
Yeah.
but this is not gonna be your life anymore. You can't go back there. There's no reason to go back to there. You experienced already the pain. You experienced already the loneliness. You experienced already that it's not your field, that you not belong there, and you have a clear vision. So we come back to, as a man, you experience pain. You can't avoid pain as a man. Even you can use the pain to grow,
Uh-huh.
or you can use the pain to stay where you are. But anyways, it takes both energy.
Uh-huh.
And then we come back to the energy, where we use our energy for what projects, where we use our energy from partners, from relationships, for
Mhm.
businesses, where we really use the energy, or we just spray our energy to everyone because we as Germans maybe also want to be liked by everybody,
Sure.
because you have to shut your mouth because the neighbor can say something. This is also like what I experienced with my grandparents, with my parents, with neighbors, with friends. You can't be too loud because then the neighbors can say something about you. This is like some of the really deep conditioning. Yes,
Keep thinking about masculinity as you speak. And it's hard for me to talk about masculinity without talking about femininity.
yes,
And we contain both, but we also, in these lifetimes, we have various expressions of these things. And, I think I'm just going to go for it, Patrick, in the sense that gender ideology has become a concern in the United States with young women and children being harmed in these ways. And I don't know how to explain it. I think there's a more compassionate way to explain it than what I'm about to say, but I grew up in a military family and conservative family, and I've transcended both sides of the political mudslinging. And I invite everybody else to do that as well. That we all get to transcend and evolve the language we have around elected officials. And how about we start supporting elected officials who take on the risks to help us make decisions in government and in policy. And we support them and protect them and help them get the best information so we can all build better answers for each other. And we need vigorous discourse. A certain degree of animosity is a sign of a healthy democracy that protects free speech and women and children especially. Because to a lot of my conservative friends who are frontline people who are the first ones to get called when things go bad in various places around the world, they don't understand how there's a confusion around what a woman is. And that's why they call it a mind virus. A mind virus that somebody can stand there when you ask them what a woman is, they literally cannot answer you. And I don't mean that in any judgmental way, but Patrick, to me, I'm going to lay this out in a map, and please challenge this, consider anything you want to say, I'm open to. There's a map that I have in my head, and it's about trauma-informed leadership. It's about understanding how to apply what you might call strategic or specific compassion and empathy, but also ownership. Because without ownership, there's no transcendence. My observation and sense is that perhaps for as long as humans have been humans, those in the evolutionary biological, what is that, a subgroup, a spectrum of people who don't feel called strongly to one gender or another, have been abused, have been suppressed, have been talked down to, have been treated like they're less than since forever. To me, lots of that comes from an overuse of pity, maybe shame, maybe guilt, maybe fear, but also frustration because they're not treated as equal human beings because they are different. They do express differently. And there are strong, look at children. Children are brutal, biologically speaking. They look for what's standard, what's stable, and they graft towards that. If they see outliers in any way, you get made fun of and you get ridiculed. That's not necessarily, or is it cultural? I think there is a cultural factor to it. But I also think there's something about us as biological beings who in so many words are vying for survival resources from our parents or any culture or society that children is in. You know, there's a fascinating blend of not just cultural exchanges, but also biological filtering out what's different, flocking to what feels most like me and where I will be most accepted. These things are all in the mix and in the soup of what we call a culture. Race is different. To me, there's one race, one human race. Cultures and various things around the world express themselves differently, but I believe we're one human family, one human race. Now, beyond that, I think our differences are worth celebrating and supporting. And beyond that, Patrick, you know, I try to see compassion for both sides, and that's where I try to stand as a leader. And how do we map policy within our companies, within our communities, even just how we conduct ourselves as sensible people in our society? I know that's a big ball of, you know, wax, we say, or a big ball of yarn. Anything you want to say about any and all that? I know it's a bit of a trigger subject, so happy to talk about it or not talk about it.
Oh, let's talk about it. I think free speech, like,
Hmm.
shouldn't hold something back. And
But we're also accountable to what we say, right? We should be free to say what we feel we need to say, but words are powerful. And this goes back to your grandparents, and there's wisdom in what they say about don't be too raucous or noisy with the neighbors because that might dampen their experience. There's a time for being loud and a place for being loud. There are people, Jordan Peterson comes to my mind, and I'm not a pro or a con. I think he's an interesting character. I think he teaches us lots of things in society. I'm not saying he's always right, but he says there's a cost to liberty. There's a cost to living in civil society. And well, it's this wild spectrum of tribal dynamics that we still all operate from to some degree, but also this layer of civilization that, well, Patrick, I wouldn't want to live without a hospital. I wouldn't want to live without a court and a police system. I wouldn't want to live without a grocery store that has great food every day when I go. Every day, you know, Patrick, every time I've been to a grocery store, there's always good fresh produce there. Every single time. It's never wrong. Same with my bank. I've never gone to my bank and they said, hey, sorry, the guy was off last week. He didn't move the money. There's no money here for you. Never. We forget this when we think about new society, revolution, tear it all down. I don't know if that, you know, hey, study history.
Yeah, I think with this, we come also back to my coaching, which what I do. And for me, it's like there's a lot of programs and ideologies which we have to deal with. And
Yes.
when we come back now, what I experienced in New Age and all that things in the last years, which I experienced a lot, that on the one hand we think all is love and everything is connected, and then
Mm,
you go back from these seminars and then you experience completely the opposite. And
mm,
then we have people who completely identify it with this movement, and then you you see it from a higher point, which is important for you, or which how you can see it without judging. But on the one hand, you see it, you can't judge. On the other hand, you judge it because it also has to do something with you. And when we come this example with the gender ideology, which I think in strong cultures like Germany and America, this is much stronger than, for example, in the place where I'm now in Creta is like an Orthodox Catholic place. So there is a less LGBTQ movement.
I see. I see.
So it also has the affection of the religious, like which religion is strong in the place or the country. And I don't want to stand on any side of it. I want to stand on my side. And I wouldn't say I want to become a transgender now. And
Mhm.
since we talked about this before, it's like for me, a lot of these people are completely confused. They don't have a connection to their vision. They don't have a connection from the young age, from their trauma, which trauma
Mhm.
happens, that
Yes.
they got drawn so much into that
Yes.
ideology, which they choose then to live. They don't have a connection to the masculine and femininity, and
Yes.
they search for something in the outside which
Yes.
they can identify, and then they completely identify with this program, with this ideology. And it's really hard also that they go a step back and reflect what I'm really doing here. Is
Mm.
really brings me to someone. What is this movement or this ideology doing to society? Is it really helping society? Is that really the value?
They
We
don't ask those questions, do they?
no,
I think
yeah,
I think we stand in a privileged position, Patrick, as two healthy
yeah,
males in a society where this is more accepted. Um, I know I was bullied growing up a little bit, not a lot. And I know how traumatic that was to my nervous system and just even feeling safe as in my own skin.
yeah,
And I would imagine somebody who's, not expressing a clear polarity in gender, I'd imagine they get quite a bit more of that. And if that's imprinted on your nervous system by such an age and you don't have support through your parents, nutrition, counseling, anything that matters in that regard, I can see why the weaponization is such as what it is and why that might seem like the only answer. But when you live in a civil society, the minute, maybe a second to a minute, the minute you harm another person or their property, you come under the full might and force of that government. And it's a meat grinder, and there's no way out of that, as far as I can tell. And that's why I don't want to see anybody go. But the minute you disrupt somebody's person or property for your ideology, you're on a bad road. And you're not, who are you helping in that grind? And you're better off. Here's what we see in America, Patrick. When our nation's young adults in college don't know how to reconcile what's going on in places like Gaza, what's going on at your border, what's going on in a couple places. I don't know why American youth identified with Gaza so much while they slept on Syria for the last 10 years. Does anybody else know what happened in Syria the last 10 years? Why is anybody talking about that? For some reason, the Gaza thing got everybody fired up in America for probably some obvious reasons that I'm not going to discuss here, but I think we know.
It's
Various.
all part of a program here in Greece, which
Okay.
is really, there's a big demonstrations here against Israel, and every
Okay.
week I see it. So
Well,
it's
I'm not saying there's any easy answers
interesting.
here, Patrick.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's what I see, though, however, is children, young adults. They're not children, they're young adults, meaning that they are subject to the full might and force of our government.
yeah,
They are they spent the last couple of years, and lots of these universities lost their federal funding because of it. I think rightfully so. When kids are coming through a system and they don't understand that they use courts, laws, and precedent to evolve culture, when they go act such as terrorists themselves and they put blockades in front of their admin staff's office buildings, what do you think you're going to get from that? The system doesn't work through terrorism. It works through laws, precedent, and advocacy. The minute you start doing that stuff, Patrick, I don't have any answers here, but to all my young, motivated friends out there, whatever side of this you fall on, you have to use the system the way the system was built if you want to actually make any real movement for you, your family, and your lineage, or anybody else. Because the minute you get into that criminal justice system,
yes,
you're not good. You're not right for the next 10 years. Fines, jail, lawyers. That's not a happy system, and those people do not care about you. You're just a number. At least that's how it is in America. You're just a number in there, and a lot of times they get you involved in drug trafficking, and when you're in prison, they make you shuttle drugs for them, whether you want to play or not. That's not a good place to go. So
yeah, an interesting point. Like, I
it
think
goes back to what?
we all, I think, on this way, since we want to talk about criminality, we all experienced like friends who wanted to draw you more into this field, and I experienced it myself with friends when I got also bullied in school, and then I think since I was so in scarcity, I hold on to these friends because I look up
Uh-huh.
to them that they are so strong, they're criminal, so they did criminal things, and I saw them maybe as somehow a leader somehow,
Mm-hmm.
but I let them go. Then
Mm.
I got not involved in it, but I experienced it, their, let's say, their aura, their
Yes.
how they treat other people, and it's
Yeah.
somehow then, let's say, cool how to
Yes.
do it.
Justified.
Yes, I don't know how they ended. I don't think they ended good.
Yeah.
This is what I can say, but it's somehow you not fit in this society, and then you try to find leaders, you try to find someone who's maybe criminal and has power above others. And this is also a thing, maybe a lot of men, which I also see, are drawn to, that
Mm-hmm.
they also here in Greece, they destroy things. They think it's cool
Yeah.
to destroy things, to put, just throw the rubbish there, to destroy things,
Yeah.
leave the toilets completely disgusting. And in their reality, it's rebellion. What would you describe in the on this demonstration against Gaza, now, for example, what is
Mm-hmm.
now in the collective, which I see now in most countries. I was Germany, now Greece, and these people, what I see, they have so much anger in themselves, so
Mm-hmm.
they want to get their anger out somewhere,
Yeah.
but they're not they don't know what they can do with their anger for themselves, for a
Yeah.
vision. They just in this state of mind to destroy something, and then they see, mm, I don't know if they see, but somehow they have to motivation that they're doing this to make the world better when they in fight with them
I think
in
most
reality.
I think most people in pain want others to feel their pain so they can help them get out of pain, because sometimes, when we're not taught ways of managing our emotions, have decent nutrition, even people who love us and want to be around us, the human psyche is a very fragile thing. And this to me is where trauma-informed leadership comes in, and understanding foundational nutrition for mental health, for, even just productive citizens of society, if you want to take it from the systems level. I think all systems contain a degree of corruption. To me, I like systems theory. I speak in systems theory sometimes, in the sense that any system has a degree of variance, and corruption is a part of that variation. And there's nothing you're never going to fully get rid of. But I think as leaders of organizations and whatever around the world who might be listening to this, or wanting to be a leader, wanting to be a better leader and a compassionate leader, and not succumbing to criminal hierarchies and toxic tribal systems that often many companies perpetuate as normal. Drugs, alcohol, justified, poor health, poor self-care. Patrick, to me, it all goes to what you were saying earlier, that the difference between pursuing an immediate pleasure versus a longer term goal. And this is also a nervous system state. If you're on Coca-Cola, donuts, cheeseburgers, and processed food,
Yeah.
you're just in almost a different frequency. And what do we do as a society for those that essentially our social systems failed 18 years ago, and they're expressing now as an adult who can't take care of themselves? I'll be the first to admit that America needs to do much better with that, because they're laying on the streets all through California. That whoever said that was a good idea? Who's that helping? I get a little upset about that because, well, I spent lots of years growing up in California, and I don't, jeez. Anyhow,